It's Ann Coulter, and it's a special occasion. Ann Coulter's new book. It's not out yet, but it's coming in a week.
Monday.
Oh, Monday.
Well, technically, the release date is Tuesday, but as you keep pointing out, thank you to your listeners, Amazon usually delivers early.
Yeah, I don't know why, but if it's you order it on Amazon, in fact, do it right now. Order it on Amazon. You always get it before the release, but she's brought me a advanced copy. Resistance Is Futile. Incredible cover. If you check Twitter or Instagram, I just put up a picture of the cover. It's Ann Coulter's new book. And, who's this very distinguished gentleman?
The distinguished gentleman is Oliver from The Guardian, who's doing a little profile
from
on
The
me.
Guardian, the British newspaper. Now, take a look at this guy. You'd see an American journalist. It's always some slob that comes in.
I know. I was thinking that.
Beautifully dressed. He looks very British.
Yes.
His name is Oliver.
His name is Oliver. That's the best thing.
Why can't we have journalists like this?
I know. That's a good point.
Even if it's the New York Times, whatever it is, always some slob comes in with a sweatshirt on and a knapsack.
I spoke at Oxford last year, and I was really disappointed that everyone wasn't named something like Nigel or Oliver.
Yeah, or Ian. It's always...
yeah, that's a good one.
All right, so let's take a picture of him and go over the New York Times and say, why can't you have your journalists
look like this? Yeah, and have good names like that.
Looks like he's doing something serious.
He is.
What the hell is he writing over here?
I know.
I never saw you take so many notes. Right now, talking to millions of people, this guy's more intimidating with the notes. What is he writing down? That's another thing. New York Times, you talk for 5 minutes, then they write down 2 words. This guy's like the court stenographer.
No, that's a very good sign. In general, my best interviews have been with college reporters because they haven't gone to Columbia Journalism School where they learn, you don't have to quote them exactly. Yeah. You can put quotes around kind of a paraphrase. Don't worry about getting it exactly right. And the quotes are always, well, I love them. Liberals may not like them, but it's actually what I said.
Well, you got to get Ann Coulter's new book, Resistance Is Futile. Now, I could just look at the chapters. Now, obviously, I just got it a second ago. I can't read it yet.
The chapter titles are excellent. And they're very short chapters with lots of headings because I am part of the Twitter generation.
It's great.
And notice it's a nice short book. That's a lot of footnotes.
Chapter 1, The Resistance. Trump is Hitler times infinity. Everybody gets called Hitler, except Hitler. He's the only one that's called Hitler. So let me just find, there's some chapter titles. Different. I love this one. Different Strocks for different folks. What about this Peter Strzok? Liberals finally support a cop, and it's him.
No, I know. Well, as I point out throughout the book, liberals have flipped positions on a lot of things, but their support for our boys in blue. I'd also add, as I describe in the book, their celebration when the Inspector General's report came out, saying that they could not find any specific evidence that a decision was directly a result of Peter Strzok's bias. Can we have that applied to all other discrimination cases? Yeah. I mean, would they accept that your boss goes around using the N-word, telling racist jokes, refuses to promote you? Yes, but we have no direct evidence that it affected a specific decision. You couldn't have discrimination law if that's what the standard was. I mean, obviously, this is a pretty big elephant in the room when the lead investigator, both on Hillary's ridiculous investigation and the Trump investigation, is writing these hysterical, girlish anti-Trump texts to his mistress.
Yeah, you look at Robert Mueller. He applied for a job in the Trump administration. He went to a job interview to be FBI director. He was turned down. He was a member of the Trump National Golf Club. He quit because he had a fight about the dues. His law firm represented Jared Kushner. He wouldn't be allowed on a jury to try Trump. How is he allowed to be the special counsel?
I don't think that's as good as the stuff I get him on. When he was head of the FBI, I mean, the problem, I'm I have my complaints with President Trump.
Yes.
But there are a few things, he's absolutely 100% right about, and no one else would have said it. The fake news is so brilliant, and the swamp is so brilliant, the concept of the swamp. And these guys, whether it's Comey or Brennan or Clapper, they just feel like, they are emperor gods on a divine mission. And both of them have presided over massive screw-ups with the full power of the government behind them. You've probably forgotten, and there are others, but one I mentioned with Mueller he was the one whose FBI, and he was very tied up in this investigation, who pursued Stephen Hatfill for
guy.
6 years after the anthrax mailing. 6 years. He brought in the lead investigator. The details of that case are shocking, how they just wasted time. Once they finally get around, and by the way, FBI agents, what you see in case after case is the FBI agents out in the field, they're trying to do what the FBI is supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, the guys back in the swamp, they're writing their memoirs and hoping for a nice write-up in the New York Times. They're obviously blowing off things like the Parkland shooter, like the Pulse nightclub, Omar Mateen. No, they're too busy spying on an opposition campaign to the woman who should have been president. But Mueller has plenty to answer for in his career. And what's interesting, both Mueller and Comey. By the way, Comey, on that 6-year pursuit, the government not only ended up having to pay Hatfill millions of dollars, but the judge who oversaw it ordered that's a separate issue. I'll get back to that. In both cases, it's in the book. In both cases, Comey and Mueller are on the record assuring higher ups. The best one is Comey assuring, interestingly, Paul Wolfowitz, who asked him during the pursuit, asked Comey, who was then at the FBI, "Are you sure Hatfill is the guy and this isn't another Richard Jewell?" Incredibly prescient statement. That was the Atlantic. The Olympic bomber
where
that
they
was
had the wrong guy
pursued for a long time, wrong guy. It's amazing that Wolfowitz was so smart and he said that. And what did Comey say? Absolutely dead to rights. It's Hatfill. Both Mueller and Comey cited the bloodhound evidence. The bloodhounds are like famously voodoo. I have a few cases where they've been blown off, but at the end of it all, both of them just say, "I wouldn't have done anything differently." So they can copyright that for the Trump investigation.
But a bad track record on Mueller. Boston, the guy had the wrong guys. I think they settled with those guys for almost $100 million when Mueller ran the FBI up there. So,
I think it's not as bad as the two cases I mentioned.
Oh, okay. But
those are egregious, and he was personally involved, asking for constant briefings on the Stephen Hatfill case. He brought in the lead investigator, and the other case was the very political case of a sitting senator indicted 2 months before an election. Senator Stevens in Alaska, very popular senator. Yeah. He lost by 2%, and then 6 months later, Eric Holder comes in. The prosecution was too corrupt for Eric Holder. So Mueller, in addition to lifelong Republican, another phrase for him could be too corrupt for Eric Holder. The judge on that case ordered an independent counsel investigation of the investigators. It was such a sleazy investigation.
Wow. It's all in the get Ann Coulter's new book, Resistance Is Futile. I'm just looking at the chapter titles. What is this chapter? A Tale of Two Dicks.
Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon.
Oh, okay. I don't want to ask.
People keep asking me, I'm like New York Times reporters. They're seriously, genuinely curious. And again, these are all very short chapters with the important points. But they keep asking me, how is this different from Clinton? How is this different from Nixon? And it's very simple, but you have to know what happened yesterday.
And what about this chapter? I love this. I love the titles of these chapters. Where is it? Bonfire of the Non-Entities.
Right. Well, those are all of the individuals that Mueller's going after. It has, I mean, I feel sort of guilty saying that about people like Carter Page and George Papadopoulos and Manafort. But, I mean, I think the biggest overriding point is Trump didn't really have a campaign. This was obvious when he was running for president. His idea for winning the presidency, which, everybody laughed at when he was doing it, was, I'll just fly around the country and give barn burner speeches to 10,000 person crowds for 18 solid months. I will push wildly popular ideas, and that will win me the White House. I mean, remember, for the first year, it was 3 people running that entire campaign. It was Hope Hicks, Corey Lewandowski, and of course the man himself, Donald Trump. He was angry when he had to bring in a pollster and a, quote, campaign manager, none of whom he listened to. He just kept getting on the plane, flying out and giving his speeches. So it would be insane and demented enough to accuse Marco Rubio's campaign or Ted Cruz's campaign of colluding with Russia. How do you collude with a campaign that didn't exist? And that's why with all of these guys that the media keep putting forth, I go back and look and see what the media said yesterday. That's what's so interesting about this book. People forget what they were saying 2 days ago. And they just keep changing the story, moving fast, throwing out criminal charges. But they keep putting out, Carter Page or George Papadopoulos as the crucial link in the big Russia conspiracy. And then they come back a week later with their tail between their legs and say, oh, yeah, Carter Page never had a conversation with Trump. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he's never met Trump. They
sat at that one phony meeting for the photo. And why did they do that? Because the media was making fun of Trump, for example, for not having a campaign manager, for not having a foreign policy team. And in both cases, well, I don't know if you've noticed in the media this past week, well, he picked him. It was his choice to pick Manafort because they're birds of a feather. He knew that he was corrupt. No, there were no other campaign managers who would have taken the job. Well, they were either taken or they wouldn't go within a million miles of Donald Trump. Same thing with the foreign policy advisors. That was just a moment of desperation. Trump reads off names from a list. The next day, the New York Times reports that was about the foreign policy advisors in the meeting with the Washington Post. Oh, I have plenty of foreign policy advisors. Why, I have them right here. They're very prestigious. And he reads a list off a name. That's the next day, the New York Times says foreign policy experts were baffled. They've never heard of these people before. Wikipedia. Yeah, because nobody would work for him. They spend a year making fun of him for having no one serious working for him, for being his own counselor, for running a campaign just by giving speeches. And now they want to say, no, he's tied at the hip with these people. Yeah.
Do you think Mueller has noticed, because he put a lot of money and resources into running this Manafort trial, has he noticed that no normal American has paid any attention to this trial, is following it, cares about it?
You're totally right. Which is why I'm embarrassed to say, and don't be driven off by this, I sent a copy to the Muslim Uncle Tom, I thank in my acknowledgements. And I said, like a third of the book is about the whole Russia stuff. And I know you think it's boring, but I think I make it interesting. And he said, no, finally I understand it. It's very interesting. Your flashbacks to are fantastic. So trust me, you never needed to pay attention until now. This book will give it to you, what you need to know.
All right, well, you get the book. It's coming out Monday or Tuesday, but you can order it right now on Amazon. It's Ann Coulter's new book, Resistance Is Futile. If you go to my Instagram or Twitter, you can see a picture of the cover. It's a great cover.
With me in the background.
Yeah, with her in the background. Resistance Is Futile. Ann Coulter. Order it now. We'll take some calls. Maybe you want to take some calls in a minute?
Sure, that would be great.
800-321-0710 is the number. Also, I want to talk about Governor Cuomo, that statement last night.
That was great.
We'll get to that in a second. Well, Ann Coulter is here with us in the studio today. Her new book is coming out on Monday, Resistance Is Futile. It's a great book. I've just been reading it. Resistance Is Futile. Order it now. Go to Amazon. You'll get it actually probably before the release date. Resistance Is Futile, the new Ann Coulter book. And the subtitle is How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. Now, when Bush got elected, they kept saying everything he did was wrong. The war was wrong. This was wrong. That was wrong. He was stupid. He didn't read all that stuff. Right. So what's going on now? Is this the same exact thing, just magnified because we have more media than we had back then?
Yes, it's funny how Republicans who used to be just the worst human beings in the history of the world suddenly get elevated when a new Republican comes along. When Bush came along, remember how they suddenly missed Reagan?
Yeah.
Wait, no, I remember what they said. Someday they'll be looking back to the halcyon days of Trump. But yes, it is so much worse with Trump. And, as I just described in the first chapter, it really it is an emotional reaction to him. They just find him absolutely icky, but they can't go on TV and say I just find him icky.
They do.
So they have to come up with this completely insane Russia conspiracy theory to give some sort of moral fervor to their anger. But they don't like his style. They don't like his vulgarity. It's as if we had, and also whom they whom he replaced, Obama. They absolutely adored him. Do you remember liberal women were writing articles all over the place about having sex dreams about Obama? Chris Matthews with the thrill up his leg. And I will admit, Obama was very charismatic. It was like having Fred Astaire as your president. I'm so glad we're not going to have to run against him again. He's very charming, and he was funny and articulate. And so to go from having Fred Astaire as your president to Rodney Dangerfield, that's what drives them absolutely mad. And they have gone mad. I mean, a lot of the book, I think, is quite good advice for the resistance. And that is, get him on the stuff he's actually done and stop running up on wishful thinking and liberal dream sequences, which is basically what we watch on cable news every night.
So why is the liberal with the socialists and going super progressive, why would they think that's the way to go? Wouldn't you try to be a little more moderate right now?
Absolutely. If they were smart, that's what they do. I mean, sorry to go back to the book that won Trump the presidency, but I think immigration is changing the country in ways that we're not entirely anticipating. And one of the ways is it's changing the Democratic Party. The Democrats thought, oh yeah, we'll have this huge base of third world voters, and Republicans won't ever be able to win an election. But it didn't occur to them, yeah, but they're not going to be voting for the likes of Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, and Steny Hoyer. No, they're going to want Ocasio-Cortez or whatever her name is. It's going in a brilliant line often cited by immigration restrictionists, the former president of Singapore said, the problem with multi-ethnic societies is people stop voting their economic interests. They stop voting their social interests. They vote their ethnic group. And that's what's happening to the Democratic Party right now. Well, people coming from socialist societies, basically any immigrant to America makes America less free, in the sense that there is no freer society on earth. And we're particularly bringing in people from authoritarian societies who are used to being bossed around, who are used to getting everything from the government. The Democratic Party, if they were smart, they'd run Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown could not win a primary in the Democratic Party anymore.
But, you take Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York.
Oh, yeah.
Well, wait, the one thing he had going for him for years, he seemed to be a sensible, common sense, middle-of-the-road, mainstream guy. Listen to him yesterday.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
Yeah.
Even the liberals are gasping at what he said.
He knows what the base is. He knows what the base is. And by the way, as you'll recall from Adios American polls of recent immigrants, by country they came from, and overwhelmingly the immigrants in New York, they don't particularly like America. They like the welfare, they like the jobs in many cases, and then send money home, ripping money out of our economy. But it's going to hit the Democratic Party first.
Chris Matthews himself, once on this very show, he said they really don't like America. Democrats. What do you mean? He said they don't like the 4th of July. They don't like hot dogs. They don't like Friday night football. They're not into any of that.
Yes. Well, in these stunning polls, both recently there was one, but even under Obama, you would think if anybody was going to say, America isn't the best country in the world, under Obama, wouldn't it be Republicans? Oh, no. Overwhelmingly Republicans. 70-80% say America is the greatest country in the world. Democrats, even under Obama, it was like 40%, i.e. they agree with many of our recent immigrants.
So what's the basic difference? Is it that the Republican thinks, we'll get you jobs, we'll create jobs, you'll make a living, but the Democrats is, you'll never get a job, we'll give you free health care, we'll take care of you. That's basically the difference.
Yes, and obviously a majority of recent immigrants they may take the job, but that's not what they want. They're voting Democrat, block voting, not quite as much as African Americans, but it is hurting the Republican Party until Republicans realize many Republicans realize the Democrats hate you.
Well, a lot of these people that came here, and the Democrats always talk about what they went through, they risked their lives to sneak in here, these refugees, came here to escape socialism. And now the Democrats say, we have socialism for you now.
Well, look at what happened to Vermont. New Yorkers flee to Vermont, and they turn rock-ribbed Republican Vermont into a socialist paradise. No, it tends not to happen that people move and drop their politics. And moreover, yes, many immigrants struggled, and they're fabulous immigrants, and they're doing great. But a lot of them came because we have very generous welfare policies.
Hey, the mayor of New York, and here's a real progressive, Mayor Bill de Blasio. It wants to close Rikers Island. It is probably the perfect prison. It's on an island, no better security. He wants to close it and make it 4 prisons right in the middle of Queens, Brooklyn, and everywhere.
Fantastic idea.
It's actually all a scam. Donors want that island for something. A casino,
to build like condos or something.
A casino, a resort. He's got
no.
huge
This is
money
just like Lindsay. This is just like Lindsay. We hate the outer boroughs. Remember that was what really hurt Lindsay when there was a huge snowstorm, and he made sure all the streets on the Upper East Side were plowed beautifully. But Queens, a week later, they still have 4 feet of snow. This is the way the left in New York and the left in the country has always been. Everything for the elites. We want our cheap immigrant help, and we do not care about our fellow Americans.
Well, we do need some. We need busboys in
I
restaurants.
love this about you. You are such an elitist.
You can never find a waiter, but you need more water, no more bread. The busboys are all there, and you do need your lawn cut. And the car wash is only $5. Why do you think that is?
And the toilet is so clean you could eat off it.
Anyway, Ann Coulter's new book, Resistance is Futile. It's an excellent book. Take a look I have it up on Twitter or Instagram if you want to see the cover. Resistance is Futile. Order it now on Amazon. Ann Coulter will be with us till right after the news. But first, on 710 WOR, let's get an update. Well, Ann Coulter is with us in the studio here for the whole hour. Her new book is out called Resistance is Futile. It's a great book. Go to Amazon and order it. Hey, actually, make sure you order it because this is the first printing. And how did this happen? There's a couple mistakes in the first printing. They'll be corrected in the second printing. So this first edition will be rare and valuable. How does that happen?
Well, there are a lot of mistakes, probably a few dozen, but they're little things. There are 2 enormous mistakes, and I have my paws on your book right now where I'm correcting them in ballpoint pen.
So we'll, at some point, auction off this copy, which is the rare one with the mistakes, and hand corrected by Ann Coulter herself.
The page 171 is so depressing because it's a great heading if you know what the chapter title is and you're reading along. And instead of being listed as a heading, it's just you're reading the paragraph and the heading just looks like it's part of the sentence and it's utterly incomprehensible.
So on the Kindle, obviously they can correct that. But
yes, it was corrected in the electronic copies.
But obviously the book...
yes.
What's the first printing, like 25,000 copies? Or
I have no idea. I was, because I'm totally laid back this way when it comes to my books. I was demanding they reprint it.
But it's a lot of copies. They can't reprint them all.
Yes, they said they'd have to put off the publication date. I don't care. It'll be really expensive. So I spent the weekend reading it slowly to see if there were more than this one huge one on 170. And there's one at the beginning of the chapter that starts with a long quote from Rachel Maddow. I mean, it has to end. She's going on and on about an excuse, an alibi by a member of the Trump administration. And someday, I swear, we're going to have a full show, no commercials, with just all of the alibis and the excuses we've heard. And, of course, the story turned out to be utter BS, no apology, nothing ever. But at the end of the quote from her, I just leap into the story. Of course, that quote has to end with, why did we never get that show?
Yeah.
And that sentence is missing, so I'm writing that in, too.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, we'll take some calls. 800-321-0710 is the number. Let's go to Dave in Northern California. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, I like a peppy guy. Go ahead.
Hey, Ann.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hey. Hey, Mr. Me Too.
I am so glad you are out there. You and Trump, man, I've actually been threatened by people wanting to smash my face in because I support you and Trump.
Bless you.
You're in Northern California. I imagine you're surrounded by liberals, right?
Well, and fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you know what? I want you to understand. This all started with the spotted owl crap. We used to have 15, 16 mills here. Now we don't. We're down to 1.
Oh.
They do not allow you to cut anything.
Right.
Okay.
That's
anyway.
A fire hazard. How did the fire start? Do they know yet?
Maniacs. Yeah, 95. There was a CAL FIRE interview the other day. The guy was talking about 95% of all these fires are started by humans.
Right. Although, as you know from Adios America, a very large number are started by illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. No, even insane Americans,
Well,
No, I know there are insane Americans. I was hoping we wouldn't be taking other countries' insane people.
Well, thanks for calling. Let's go to Paul Scarsdale. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Ann. Love you guys. So, hey, do you think Trump secretly doesn't want the Mueller investigation to end because he knows his ratings will go up and he knows there's nothing there at the end of the day?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
think that is very possible. I think he may be using it the same way Obama used, ironically, the birther thing. I mean, it was weird how Obama would not put out. I didn't think it mattered, but the long form birth certificate, and that's what the birthers got obsessed with. We want to see the long form. And even though I was kind of annoyed, well, really annoyed with Donald Trump when he first brought up the birther thing, because it was insane. There were announcements in newspapers, and don't give me your angry calls on this. So, it was Byron York and the American Spectator, my newspaper, Human Events, this blog, Sweetness and Light. It was all right wingers coming out and digging up the stuff, proving that Obama was in fact born in Hawaii. And so it made right-wingers look crazy. The only time I ever heard about the birther thing was when I turned on MSNBC. Fox never talked about it. So it made the whole right wing look crazy. And I think analogously, this Russia stuff is so insane. I think I've thought this for a while. And also, I don't think he can fire him because, as you say, there's nothing to it. Consequently, as I point out in the book, Mueller's only way out of this is to hope that Trump fires him so he can become a hero of the resistance like Comey.
Yeah, I think Mueller realizes he's in a very bad spot here. There's nothing to find.
And he can't clear Trump. That is not his job. He cannot do it.
Yeah, he cannot put out the final report saying there's nothing there because he will be shunned by the swamp where he lives in Washington. He'll be hated at the swamp parties, the swamp country clubs. He'll
no
be
more honorable appellations for him. Oh, no.
Let's go to Robert in Brooklyn. Robert, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Mark. Great show. 2 questions for Ann, if I could be so...
well, let's hear the first one. See how it goes.
The first one is, thank you. And there was an AG report that said FBI agents were taking more than if you can eat it, drink it, or smoke it. They were taking tickets and all sorts of gifts from media people. And we never heard anything about who those media people were and who the people with the FBI were. That's question 1. And question 2 is, do you think Bruce Orr will fall on his sword, or you think he'll point upstream to somebody else?
Hey, we should point out there is currently an IG investigation into Strzok, Page, McCabe.
Right, the Russia, because the first IG report was only on the Hillary investigation. So we still have the Russia investigation. But if the standard is there's no specific evidence that a single decision was determined by this bias, well, that's kind of a high standard. In terms of pointing the finger up, I mean, Orr is going to dig his heels in. As long as you're anti-Trump, you can break the law, in all kinds of ways, and you will be a hero. So we know. I mean, the media really has its finger on the scale here when all you will get is fawning coverage, including if you are a porn star or if you were responsible for droning civilians like John Brennan. I mean, you can. The media may have wanted to boil you in oil. Feed you to the dogs. If you come out and join the resistance, you will be a hero, which is kind of a disturbing thing in society. That it's not even the swamp in the sense of the prosecutors or the law or the judges. Although so far, I don't know. We'll see how the judges are. The judges, other than the ones in Hawaii and the Ninth Circuit, have been pretty fair and honorable. You just go against Trump, and suddenly all the media will have to say about you is how clever you are and what a great dancer, and you make your own clothes and so beautiful and honorable and a lifelong Republican and blah, blah, blah. It must be lovely to be a liberal in America.
Well, let's go to Robert in Brooklyn. Robert, what do you want to ask?
Yeah, so that it ends with Bruce Orr. There are no more people who are dragged in after him. That's it?
I think I went to the same caller again.
Well, let's see. More people. I think we already know the people being dragged in. I mean,
Strzok, Page,
and Steele,
Susan Rice will end up.
But in terms of the sleazy business with the Russian dossier, I think we know who the people are.
Well, but
the
Susan
Clinton
Rice,
campaign.
Susan Rice was the one caught unmasking these names, and she was the UN ambassador. She had no business even being involved in that.
Again, the rule is you can break the law if you're a Democrat. I mean, if a Republican had done any of the stuff, as you'll read in the Tale of Two Dicks chapter, even what Nixon was accused of, every other president had done in spades. Europeans, boy, the liberals worry about what Europeans think about us. They're laughing at this, spying on the opposing team. FDR did it. LBJ did it. They did it to the press. They did it to the opposing parties. They did it to primary opponents. But you can't do the same things if you're a Republican.
Well, get Ann Coulter's new book, Resistance Is Futile. You can get it right now on Amazon. Let's go to Dan in Long Island. Dan, what do you want to say?
What an honor to speak to you, Ann. I'm a deplorable right down to my socks, retired lieutenant from the police department, and I listen to you guys on the radio, on television, and I can't tell you how happy I am knowing that right now on the left coast, liberals are waking up and the stock market's up 370 and a trade deal with Mexico is imminent. I mean, that is ruining so many lattes at Starbucks. I can't even say how happy I am. And my friends in high places section, wouldn't it be great to have a friend in CNN? There's not a single mention on their website on my governor's big mouth shooting off his big mouth yesterday. Chris Cuomo must have cleansed the website. They don't even report it. It's not on the website at all. The stupidest thing said in politics in the last 10 years.
Well, wait, let me play it for those. Wait, hang on. For those that didn't hear it, Governor Cuomo.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
So CNN never reported that, huh?
Well, in CNN's defense, I don't know if you heard, but Omarosa says there's a tape. And we need to really talk about the tape that no one has yet, that doesn't exist. We're just going to keep talking about that tape because really, Mark, why would she lie?
Yeah, you're right. Every time she's on CNN, they never anywhere in the interview say, you've been fired from the White House several times before. You were fired from the Clinton White House. Or they never said to Brennan, you've been caught lying under oath to Congress on numerous occasions. They never mentioned that in the interview.
Well, yeah, and as long as we're on the subject, the last weekend they had Al Sharpton on MSNBC. I think it was last week or the weekend before, talking about Trump's taxes. Now, I don't know. If you're working at MSNBC, don't you want to take Al Sharpton aside and say, we're going to have you on. We really value you, Al. But since your office kept having suspicious fires every time you were audited, destroying your tax records, I'm thinking maybe you're not the right guy to be talking about someone else's taxes.
That could be. Get Ann Coulter's book. It's Resistance Is Futile. Go to my Twitter or Instagram. You can take a look at the cover. It's a great book. Resistance Is Futile. Now, it's coming out Monday, but order it right now and you'll get it first. Just go to Amazon and order it there, or AnnCoulter.com.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. My guest is Ann Coulter. She's in that rarefied group of people who don't need an introduction. But I will give her one anyway, and I'll tell you why. Because, and I wish she weren't listening, because I actually do believe she could be embarrassed. She's brilliant, and I don't use the term very often. Her books are simply significant. And I want you to know that is how I regard her and what she writes. I don't care if you agree with her or not. She has so much to back her up. They're so well researched, her books. You would have to write a book as equally well researched to overturn the conclusions that she reaches. Her latest book was just published 2 days ago. Resistance Is Futile. Resistance. Yes, that's right. Renaissance has become futile too, I might add. It has been overturned by the people in the resistance. Resistance is futile. How the Trump-hating left lost its collective mind. So, Ann, now officially welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here, and I'm so happy you're married to my favorite reader.
I know I am, and it's a very sweet thing to say. I'm sure she's smiling from ear to ear now as she does her Thursday workout. Listen, I want to know, you and I spoke on Election Day. There's no reason you would recall this. I'm reminding you. You and I spoke on my show actually on Election Day 2016, and you and I were both pessimistic, and you and I both felt that if the Democrats won, it's not merely if Hillary Clinton won, if the left won, that's what mattered, then we couldn't really see, for the foreseeable future at any rate, a renaissance. That's the word I wanted to really use. A renaissance was possible. So I want to know your mood right now.
That's a wonderful thing to be reminded of, because every time I want to strangle Trump, I do have to remember what the alternative was. And it was pretty bad. I mean, just to cite one of many, many, many examples, in response to that hideous shooting, targeted shooting of policemen in Dallas, Texas, Hillary went on Wolf Blitzer, and her response was to say she would institute a national program of implicit bias training for the police in America.
Really? Right after the murders?
Yep. She didn't even have an advisor to say, maybe you shouldn't go on TV right now if what you're going to do is keep promoting the BLM narrative here. But no, she did. That was the approach. So those were among the reasons it looked very dark if Hillary were to win. She was just pedal to the metal on identity politics. You and I would be in prison for microaggressions now. I think we really were at a tipping point, and she was a particularly aggressive version of it. I mean, one of the things I say in the book at the beginning is this craziness about Trump he's like Hitler, he's a fascist, it's the authoritarian personality. And I'm not just talking about the nut bars on MSNBC. This gets written in the New York Times, the gold standard of journalism. And in fact, what have we seen from Trump? And I mentioned this to contrast it with a true authoritarian personality, Hillary Clinton. But with Trump, even for something like what I still affectionately refer to as the Muslim ban, which was very far from a Muslim ban, but I'm sure your listeners know that. The Muslim ban, look, the president, as everyone I think sane now knows, the president has both constitutional authority and express statutory authority, written by Congresses, banged out through compromise between Republicans and Democrats, signed into law by previous presidents. The president has the authority to exclude anyone, any foreigners, when he thinks it is in the interest of the United States. And yet some potty little district court judge in Hawaii can say, I don't think so. And what does the president do? I mean, he could say, no, we're co-equal branches. A district court judge, you're not even the Supreme Court. And even if you were the Supreme Court, you're only equal to me. You're not higher than me. But no, what does Trump do? And I'm not saying he should have done otherwise, but someday I wish some president would put these potty little district court judges in their places and just say thanks for your opinion. But still, I think if you were an authoritarian president, he would say, no, I'm going to go ahead and do it. You don't have authority over me. No, he fully complies, appeals to the Supreme Court, wins. And we see this over and over again, plus which, just add to his personality. His personality is the exact opposite of an authoritarian personality. He's always saying of everyone, of illegal aliens, of Kim Jong-un, of Chuck Schumer, oh, incredible person, fantastic personality. So fun. These guys, he has a suck-up personality, and yet in the pages of the New York Times, the likes of Madeleine Albright will still be talking about, danger can come here. Other governments, we know the rules of history.
Well, they are set on undoing the last election, and the latest is with regard to Michael Cohen. So why don't let's go to this moment and then have the bigger picture. And again, Ann Coulter's book, which is truly significant, is Resistance Is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. It is up at DennisPrager.com. So the argument now is, including yesterday, and it was painful to me because I have known him for a long time, and we have worked together. Bret Stephens called for his impeachment. And it was based on, well, look, he has engaged in criminality by giving out a payment or ordering his lawyer to and then reimbursing his lawyer in violation of campaign finance law. What is your response to that whole thing?
This is a perfect example of the book, and also why one of the funny aspects to the book. I don't know, around chapter 12, which I'd written months earlier. I'm reading through it and thinking, the quotes I'm taking from MSNBC and CNN, this could be tonight's show. And I'm quoting a show from 8 months ago. So I began one of the chapters saying, you'd think it would be hard to write a book about what's happening right now, current events. But in fact, with the resistance, it's surprisingly easy because it's the same thing over and over again. Something gets disproved and they just, they never apologize. They just set it aside for a few weeks and then roll it back out again. So, as luck would have it, I write about Manafort and Cohen, and it's absolutely, completely apt to what happened this week. I think the campaign finance charge, it is almost self-discrediting for two reasons. It shows that the whole purpose of going after or fixating on Manafort and Cohen, although Cohen does seem like someone who you might find a little law-breaking in there. But the point is that they worked for Donald Trump, and Robert Mueller's commission is basically, this Trump looks like a sleaze. See if you can find anything there. And so he has 17 talented prosecutors determined to find something on Trump and those around him, looking for some laws they've broken. There are a lot of laws out there. This is not a system, a country of laws anymore, when you're not just, we stumbled upon evidence of a crime, let's investigate. No, it's look at these people and find some violation they may have committed. But to throw in with Cohen, I don't dispute that he didn't pay the taxes he should have. Okay, great, glad you got him on that. But to throw in a campaign finance violation, the silliest of all possible campaign violations, I might add. Two things that I think are the most important to know about it is, number one, if the whole thing is true, if Trump is absolutely guilty, which he isn't, footnote, that will be in point two. Okay, what's the result? Oh my gosh, Dennis, he might have to pay a fine. That's the result of this. Obama had all kinds of campaign finance violations. Your listeners have probably seen this. It's been all over Twitter. He paid $500,000 in fines for not reporting contributions to his campaign. But the second point is... All right,
hold on. I don't want to interrupt the second point. This is very significant, speaking to Ann Coulter, as we continue a hysteria, the likes of which America has never experienced. It began with the election of Donald Trump and continues. Her book, Resistance Is Futile, is up at my website. I'll be back with Ann Coulter in a moment. I do my daily minute for Hillsdale College. In the midst of all the darkness, and there's a tremendous amount of darkness, there is a light called Hillsdale, which actually pursues truth, the word that has been raped, as indeed the word rape has been raped by the left. Nazi has been raped. Racist has been raped. I use the word very judiciously because it's not an easy term to even express. But that's what's happened to language. At Hillsdale, language is actually what it means. And they have a way of your helping them without giving them a penny, just subscribing to Imprimis. And I'm told this is the last week to sign up. Ooh, that's in bold. So I got to tell you that. I'm emphasizing it. This is the last week to sign up. You get it free. This wonderful piece of literature in the mail every month of a transcribed speech given at Hillsdale. It's at pragerforhillsdale.com. Please note that. It's very simple to remember. pragerforhillsdale.com. Okay, back to Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter's book just out 2 days ago. Every one of her books is important. Every one of her books is not reviewed in the New York Times. That's part of the proof that it's important. And it's really a statement. It is a statement. I could tell you stories. Do you know that my last book, which was a Bible commentary, Ann, my last book was the #1 national bestseller on Amazon in nonfiction, #2 of all books sold in America.
I believe that.
No, thank you. But I'm only telling you it didn't appear on the New York Times bestseller list.
Unbelievable.
It was #1 on Publishers Weekly, #2 on Amazon, sold in Costco, and it didn't. So this is the New York Times. Okay.
I must say, I don't know why we don't all just use BookScan now. Everyone has always said to me in other businesses, they say, but at the checkout counter, why don't they just count? They have that code at the back of every book. Well, guess what BookScan does? And BookScan captures, I believe, about 80, close to 90% of the market. I mean, Amazon uses it for every book that is actually sold.
That's
we have
right.
an actual
That's right.
number of how many have sold.
Right.
For one of my books, I was overwhelmingly #2 on BookScan, close to #1, and #3 and 4 were far down. And the New York Times put me at like #15.
Yeah,
no, they have a
right.
secret formula.
They have a secret formula. That is exactly right. Anyway, okay, so we're back to you were
Point
making
two.
yes, point two.
I left your listeners hanging.
Yes.
To the crucial point, and I can make this pretty quickly, and that is for any campaign finance violation. This is really the heart of the matter. Besides the silliness of the penalty being nothing more than paying a fine, big deal. Campaigns pay them all the time. To determine whether or not this is a campaign expense that should have been reported, the crucial question is, would you have spent this money but for the fact you're running for office? Now, that's always a problem. If you buy a new suit, is that because you need a new suit for the campaign? If Trump hires a new florist for Mar-a-Lago because people can't come into Mar-a-Lago and see drooping flowers, and I don't really like the old florist, or would he have done that anyway? How about the Trump University settlement? He couldn't have a lawsuit going on and on as he's running for president. Was that settlement payment? Was that a campaign finance expenditure? I think quite clearly, and the government is never going to be able to overcome this, Trump pays a lot of nuisance lawsuits. $130,000 isn't a lot of money to keep Ivanka, his grandkids, his wife, young Barron, from finding out that some floozy is accusing him. And by the way, I am totally appalled that the president is alleged to have carried on with these floozies and not in the sanctity of the Oval Office like Bill Clinton did. But $130,000 is nothing. Oh, also his name. I mean, his entire brand is him. He can't be having, ugly, depressing lawsuits out there. Now, contrast that with something that clearly was, I think, money being spent because he was running for president. John Edwards. When he had the pregnant mistress, pregnant with his child, a wife dying of cancer, he had all these gazillionaires paying to support his mistress and keep her and his love child in hiding. Is Bunny Mellon still paying to keep up Riel Hunter? I don't think so. So that actually was campaign related, and it was more than $1 million, and yet the first prosecution on that was widely ridiculed in the press, and the jury acquitted.
This is what Brett Stephens writes about Edwards. As for the Edwards standard, the case failed because prosecutors could not prove that the former North Carolina senator received campaign donations from benefactors to influence an election rather than simply cover up an embarrassing affair. In Trump's case, There is little doubt about the purpose of the payment to Stormy Daniels, to prevent disclosure of their alleged liaison less than a month before the election and barely 2 weeks after the Access Hollywood tape came to light. What do you say to that?
I say it's exactly the opposite of the truth, but in any event, when there are mixed motives, the accused wins in the campaign finance cases. But as I just said, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to check. Is Bunny Mellon still funding Riel Hunter? Does anyone have any doubt that she is not? That these other wealthy donors that were sending money to be used to keep up the mistress? I don't think they agreed to fund her for life, whereas I am quite sure we can find loads of nuisance payments from Trump, both before and after he ran for president, including the one I just mentioned, Trump University.
On a side matter of this issue, one of the reasons conservatives don't like bigger government is that it renders the government capable of making more Americans criminals.
Yes. Yes, I cite in my book, the book you're probably familiar with, Harvey Silverglade's 3 Felonies a Day. His argument, as the title suggests, is that even law-abiding Americans mowing their lawn, paying their taxes, could inadvertently be committing 3 felonies a day. There are so many federal crimes on the books. We don't know how many there are. The Department of Justice or Wall Street Journal or somebody at some point undertook a project to count how many federal felonies there are and couldn't do it. Gave up in frustration. Another, 60 or 100 are added to the Federal Register every year. So if you want to get somebody...
You can. That's the point. Her book, Resistance Is Futile, up at DennisPrager.com. Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and Ann Coulter is my guest. Her book was published 2 days ago. I'm happy to go out on a limb, because that's what it takes in the left-wing dominated media of America. But it's irrelevant to me. I'm just telling you that whatever she writes is important. Resistance is Futile. How the Trump-hating left lost its collective mind. In that regard, we're kindred spirits, because I've been writing about this for so many years. Hysteria, I put it this way: hysteria is to the left what oxygen is to biological life.
You're a regular viewer of MSNBC too.
Actually, CNN. And by the way, there's a deterioration there that is just mind-numbing. That they're competing with MSNBC for the same viewership. They have given up any pretense of objectivity.
Yes. In fact, I noticed this week that wonderful. I've been following him. This is the one reason I actually kind of used to like watching CNN. You might see Paris Denard. And when he was on with Philip Mudd, and Mudd had that absolute breakdown, screaming at him, and Paris was so charming. He kept making his point, and he was, of course, telling the truth, and Mudd was, of course, lying. But still, Paris was probably why Mudd was so hysterical. But Paris never lost his temper. Just kept asking him questions, and it was very clear, I think, for anyone who doesn't know which side was telling the truth, that Paris had the truth on his side. At the end of it, Mudd is yelling at him, "Get out, get out!" It's not his show. In any event, I was looking at that thinking, okay, that's it. That's the end of Paris at CNN. And guess who CNN got rid of today? Paris Denard. You can be, as I describe in the book, the CNN and MSNBC, well, the networks, they have particular requirements for the conservatives or Trump supporters. They allow on their, not Trump supporters, quote, Republicans, they allow on their networks. Number one, they have to, in some sense, be Republicans so that the network isn't completely lying. Number two, they have to be so ferociously anti-Trump that they will say crazy things that even a liberal wouldn't say. And number three, they have to be extremely unappealing. You expect them, like, well, I won't name names, your listeners will know who they are, to be, petting a Persian cat and screaming, "You have failed me, number 7." Or they look like, sort of the dorky type, the Allegheny Airlines ticket collector at Cleveland Airport. But no, Paris Denard, I never understood how he slipped through. It was only a matter of time before they dumped him.
Well, the same with the New York Times opinion page. They have a couple of Republican columnists, or at least former Republican, but they don't have a single. They have about 24 columnists. Not one defends the President of the United States. So how could they forget their news pages? How could they claim that their opinion page is open?
No, I said this to a group of reporters, CNN and New York Times types. In fact, I think I put it in my book. I know there aren't a lot of us who voted for Trump, barely enough to make him president. You'd think you could find somebody there, someone to put on your news pages, your opinion pages, to put on your network, someone who provably voted for Trump.
Yes. After all, that is a large percentage of the country, even if it's not the majority.
Right.
It's not zero.
Right.
All right. Then look, it's very problematic. So anyway, your book is about this hysteria. I was on CNN. You will love this. I was on Don Lemon's show, and I announced, as a Jew and as an author of a book on anti-Semitism and as one who taught Jewish history at Brooklyn College and has fought for Jewish issues my whole life, that this argument that Donald Trump inaugurated this upsurge of anti-Semitism was a massive lie on the part of the media, and it was proven such because all of the hundreds, 90% of the hundreds of threats to Jewish community centers actually came from a disturbed American Jewish kid living in Israel. The other 10% came from a black radical who wanted to frame his ex-girlfriend. And all they did was yell at me.
That's what I mean. They put one sane person on, and the whole edifice falls apart. So they can't put one sane person on. Total buzzkill for the viewers. They just want to get angrier and angrier.
That's right. Okay, in a moment, back.
I keep myself buried, rooted in my sleep.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here, married to Ann Coulter's favorite reader. That is my new identity. I love it. I thought that was precious.
Good work.
Yes, I agree. The book that Ann Coulter just wrote, just out 2 days ago, Resistance Is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. So you obviously, you substantiate what I tell my listeners and readers almost every day, and that is that we are bathing in a hysteria. Do you believe, and I'm not leading you on if you don't tell me, has there been a hysteria like this for this long in American history?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't live through Nixon and McCarthy, but I've written a lot about it. And obviously, I mean, I love how the media thinks that no one knew to distrust the media until Trump came along. Heard of Brent Bozell, Reed Irvine, Ann Coulter. I mean, my life has been picking apart the New York Times, making fun of Keith Olbermann and so on. But, whoa, it is so much more extreme now. And also without, as I say, without allowing an alternative opinion. I would often be the only conservative college speaker, that students would have a chance to hear in 4 years of college. No, even that has got to be shut down. We cannot allow that one speech. And by the way, they're right. I'd win a lot of converts in that one speech in 4 years. The left has total control of the media, of Hollywood, of Silicon Valley, of the swamp, of the universities, of the public schools, K through 12. The one place you can go for an alternative perspective is online. And what are they doing? They're trying to shut down and free speech on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. No, we can't allow this out. And we are seeing the results of it. I mean, you can turn on CNN or MSNBC to see how crazy it gets. This isn't just a recounting of each crazy thing, but there are a lot of crazy things. But because I have the luxury of not having a job, I can spend, a month on Nexus, and this will probably frighten listeners because it's so boring the way it's told from day to day, but I think you'll understand the whole Russia business a lot clearer from reading my book. I think there are a lot of points that people have been missing because when you have to react to that day's news all the time, you don't see the bigger picture. But, I mean, for one thing, that hysteria we went through for a few weeks over poor Don Jr.'s meeting at Trump Tower, and with everyone, the director of the FBI and Lindsey Graham and every single person on TV acting like they've known this forever. If you're running a campaign and someone offers you opposition research on your opponent from Russia, what's the first thing you do, Dennis? The first thing, you call the FBI. Well, okay, the Hillary Clinton campaign was offered opposition research on her opponent. In fact, she paid $12 million for it. She didn't call the FBI. The Democratic National Committee didn't call the FBI. The FBI offered to pay Christopher Steele, a foreigner, for his opposition research from Russians, and the FBI didn't call the FBI. So, let's knock off the nonsense. The funny thing about the dossier and the dossier and everything around the dossier, including the Carter Page warrant, FISA warrant, is people forget this, which is why it's so much fun to go back and read Nexus. For 10 long months, we did not know that Hillary's campaign and the DNC had paid $12 million for that dossier. Remember, there was that total red herring about, first a Republican.
Yeah, the Washington Examiner.
No, that was a red herring. It was never funded by a Republican. Never, never, never. 10 months the the media could carry on about the dossier. Wow, did they change their tune 10 months later when it turned out to be opposition research for Hillary?
Let me ask you, I have not bounced this off anyone except my audience, and I didn't get their reactions. I just said it yesterday. Is it what do you think of the idea, and I just want to remind you, if you think it's kooky, say it. Why don't we get a special counsel, a special prosecutor, and to look into the DNC and Steele and the dossier? Why is
it? Yes. Well, in theory, I suppose the Department of Justice could do it. The idea and I suppose the FBI in theory could do it, but they are very swampy, and they're not going to. I'll tell you what else we need a special counsel for. Who leaked the Access Hollywood tape? We have to have 2 years of investigation on a, still to this day, no evidence behind the claim that it was Russia that hacked the DNC. Not that it matters. So what? Lots of people interfere in our elections. We interfere in a lot of their elections. But just, as a little point of fact, worth noting for history, we still have no evidence that it was the Russians that hacked the DNC. That is supposed to be, according to Thomas Friedman of the New York Times and a million other people, an act more foul or as foul as Pearl Harbor, an attack like the 9/11 attack. Well, all it did was release actually true emails written by Democrats. They didn't want that information coming out. You know what information Trump didn't want coming out? A private conversation he had on a hot mic tape. That is every bit as illegal, the release of that hot mic tape, as the release of the Democrats' emails. Why don't we have 2 years of investigations into who leaked that? The damages are enormous.
Well, all right, so we both want a special counsel. And why isn't there a special counsel? I mean, we're already going to have one.
No, that's actually not a bad idea. Maybe what Sessions did with something or other, where he brought in, he could assign a U.S. attorney to it.
Yes, and what about, did Hillary Clinton benefit her foundation while Secretary of State?
Yes, that seems quite clear. Apparently, we must live under the rule that Hillary is unprosecutable. Both of the Clintons are.
I don't give a damn about prosecuting them.
I know.
I want the truth out to the American people.
Yes.
That's the prosecution I care about.
Yes. Yes.
All right, we'll continue in a moment. Ann Coulter's book, Resistance Is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. Hi, everybody. Not many authors that I have a whole hour with, but Ann Coulter I always do.
Thank you.
Well, you deserve it. The book is Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. I have a question that I wrestle with, actually, and I have since his election. And in totally serious terms, how do you personally understand conservatives who hate Trump?
There are two kinds. Some fit into what I'm describing about an awful lot of the resistance hating him. They just find him icky. I remember during when he was running for office, having mostly Republicans sit me down and complain about the tackiness of Trump, and I just, as if they were like breaking news to me, and I'd say yes, I know, and he's the only one talking about trade and immigration, and talking about Kate Steinle and anchor babies. I mean, his instincts are uncanny. I don't care if he's Rodney Dangerfield. I do not care. So you have the ones who find him icky, and then I really do think a lot of them just want to get on TV. There are a lot of rewards for Republicans who will go on TV and say terrible things about Trump. I mean, Rick Wilson, his book will probably do quite a bit better than mine. He's certainly got more media attention than I have. I'll tell you another indication of how crazy, how different it is under Trump, the world under Trump. I used to put out a book, go on the Today Show, Good Morning America, maybe the Late Night with Jay Leno, certainly Bill Maher, lots of shows would have me on MSNBC and CNN. Now, they've gotten a little bit more partisan in the last few years, but as far as I can tell, as a ferocious Trump supporter, the entire media is closed to me now. I mean, I guess, and thank you very much for having me on. I have you and a few other talk radio hosts, although most of them are more dispersed. This is such an important interview, and thank you again. And I guess there's Fox News, and then there's the entire rest of the media. So if I wanted to do a lot of, in fact, I did do probably the only time I will be able to argue with a liberal on this book. I did a taped interview with Michael Isikoff, who wrote Russian Roulette. I did it yesterday. It's going to run tomorrow, Friday, I guess. Short interview, but he was.
All right, I'm going to watch that and listen. It's always too short. Ann Coulter, who is brilliant, and her book is Resistance is Futile, up at DennisPrager.com. Thank you, Ann.